You live by the sword, you will die by the sword. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of this vast planet called Earth you find yourself in. This is Damon from Life Inspirations. Today I want to talk to you about you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And that can be found in Matthew chapter 26, verse 52. Well, I got a couple stories I want to tell you about living by the sword and dying by the sword. I grew up here in Baltimore, and as you all know, Baltimore has its share of violence just like any other major city in the U.S. Let me tell you three stories that let me know that you reap what you sow. So if you're going to sow bad stuff, you're going to get it back to you. That's what the Bible says. You reap what you sow. You sow good stuff, it comes back to you. You sow love, peace, joy, it's going to come back to you. You sow violence, hate, bitterness, decisiveness, whatever you do, it's going to come back to you. Because the Bible is true. I don't care what anybody says. Well, I remember one day I was working. I was probably about 17 years old. And I was I was catching the subway back home from work. And I was with my buddy, a friend of mine. We were walking from the subway station. And when we walked from the subway station, we had to walk past this skating ring in Baltimore called Painter's Mill. And this skating ring was a very popular place where a lot of teenagers would hang out. I remember we would go there oftentimes. But it also was laden with violence. Every time you went there, you had to be prepared because you either going to be in a fight or you're going to see a fight. So me, oftentimes I would avoid going there because I just didn't feel like getting into that nonsense. But let me go back a little bit further. About a week before, me and my buddies coming from the subway from work, we was at the carnival and we had got into a fight. And we gangbanged this one guy. We beat him up. We jumped him and we beat him up pretty good. And the funny thing is I was trying to get my licks in him, but I couldn't because every time I would go swing to hit him, someone else would hit him and he would fall. And I could never land cleanly on him. And I thank the Lord that I didn't, because here's the story. We was walking from the subway station and we're walking home. And we had to cross Painter's Mill Road where the skating ring was at. So as me and my buddy walking up the street, we see this group of guys. They were known then now as the Park Heights Boys. And anybody knows Baltimore knows Park Heights is a rough area. And we knew the Park Heights Boys would always come to the skating ring and start trouble. So we're walking up the street and I see this group of guys. It had to be about 30 of them or more. A posse, a gang. So me and my buddy walking and I'm like, hey, my buddy name is James. I said, James, I don't recognize these guys coming down the street. And James like, me neither, but I think I recognize somebody up there, but just walk past them, don't look at them. So as we getting closer to these guys, my heart is pounding because the closer I get, and it was probably about 9, 10 o'clock at night, it was dark. I just could not recognize any of their faces. And I said, James, dude, I don't recognize any of these guys. James like, just don't look at them, keep walking. So me and James were on the sidewalk and I was walking behind James. So the guys were on the sidewalk walking toward us. And I'm telling you, it's about 20, 30 of them. Well, as we got closer, I realized I didn't know any of them. And I realized these are probably the Park Heights Boys because they would come up there in a gang and they would fight all the time. Well, you ever been so nervous where you're hot and cold at the same time? Or you ever been so nervous where you can feel your heart beating through your ears? Well, that's how I felt. And I was like, okay, I'm getting ready to get beat up and I just don't want to die. I just don't want to die. And immediately came back to me the week before we had did the same thing to this one guy at the carnival. So I said, oh boy. And I've been in church all my life and I knew these scriptures. I said, Lord, please don't let them kill me. Don't let them knock out my front teeth. I need my teeth. You know, I was nervous. I laugh now, but it wasn't funny back then. Well, anyway, we get about 10 feet from them. And these guys, they get off the sidewalk and they get into the street. So we had no way out, no way of escape. Nonetheless, they jumped us. James got hit first because he was in front of me, and he ran into the crowd, and they jumped on him. You ever see ants on like a praying mantis? That's how it was. Well, ants on the grasshopper. James was really tall. And I'm watching James get beat up. So I'm nervous now. I'm like, oh boy. So one guy hits me, boom. And I run across the street into this field. And I'm running across the field. And I'm like, okay. And they like, I remember they were chasing me. And they like, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill you. So I'm running. I had this bag from an old company who was called Charlie Rudo's. And this bag had my work uniform in it. But they thought it was the tennis shoes. But Charlie Rudo's, they sold tennis shoes. So everybody knew Charlie Rudo's was a tennis shoe place. Real popular in Baltimore back in the day. So I'm running, and they're like, get the bag. I'm like, you can have the bag. And I'm running, and they're chasing me. And I never ran so fast in my life. My feet, I kept falling, getting back up, and they were chasing me. But I couldn't get my legs under me, just like the cartoons. My feet were going too fast for my body. Well, anyway, something told me, drop. Now I know it was nothing but the Spirit of the Lord. I dropped in the grass. And these guys were like, where you go? Where you go? And I remember I had this bright red shirt on. I'll never forget. Certain parts in your life, some traumatic areas in your life, we all remember. You remember vividly. And I remember I had a red shirt on. And I dropped in the grass. And the grass wasn't high, but it was dark. And right in front of me, probably about 30 feet, was a wooded area. I was trying to run to the wooded area, which probably would have been pretty stupid. But I was trying to get away. The guys are like, where you go? Where you go? We're going to kill him. If we find you, boy, we're going to kill you. I'm terrified. And my heart is beating through my chest. I thought they could hear my heart beat. I was so scared. They couldn't find me. Yeah, I took a punch, which caused me to run. But they couldn't find me in that grass. And they ran away because the police started coming. Someone to call the cops because James was getting beat up. Fast forward, I took one punch, had a bruised jaw. That was it. James had some knots. We didn't walk away beat up to the point where we had to be hospitalized, but we were traumatized. And I had suffered a little bit of PTSD from that event. There was times I didn't want to go anywhere in public where a whole bunch of guys by myself because I was fearful of being jumped again. So that was my story. Another story, we had a guy we grew up with. He was a pretty violent dude. I'm not going to say his name for protection purposes, but this dude was pretty violent. He was known to carry a gun, and he had did about 25 years in jail, ultimately because he had killed some people. Dangerous dude. You didn't mess with him because you didn't want to be on his bad side. Well, he had did a lot of dirt, a lot of death, a lot of killing in his life. He did 25 years in Baltimore in a prison system here in Maryland, prison system. He gets out of prison and picks back up where he left off at, so he thinks. And he was home no longer than a week that he was gunned down in the streets of Baltimore, trying to pick back up and maintain that same persona, tough guy, killer attitude. He was killed about 1-2 weeks after he was released from prison, after doing 25 years. So the moral of the story is this. You live by the sword, you will die by the sword. You live by violence, violence will be your best friend. So instead of promoting violence, let's promote love. Learn to love, learn to be a peacemaker. The Bible says, blessed is the peacemaker. And you live by peacemaking, you will have a life of peace. So I hope this story finds someone blessed. Again, if you liked it, I'll ask you to share, subscribe to this channel, help me grow it, and share this with someone who may need it. No, especially today, a lot of these kids are carrying guns and they don't understand why their lives are being taken short. Growing old now is a blessing because a lot of folks are not making it, particularly here in Baltimore. And I pray for my city. I love my city. But a lot of folks, a lot of kids are dying early because you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So until next time, be blessed.